Everyone. Welcome to the 28th episode of Social Good Podcast. Today we have with us Mhraf Worku. She is the Director of Sales and Partnership at Chatac AI. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mhraf.
Thank you so much, Rose. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward
Sure,
to, our conversation.
sure. Let's go into where are you based and how are you doing, Mhraf?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm from Ethiopia, so I'm currently based in Addis, but I tend to go back and forth between Mauritius and Addis.
Mm-hmm.
So I consider both to be sort of homes for now.
Cool. Did you spend the majority of your life in Mauritius then?
No, not at all. I've spent the last year and a half in Mauritius.
Hmm.
I grew up partly in Ethiopia, but sort of moved around a bit. So grew up in Ethiopia, Kenya, and South Africa. And then once I finished, sort of my high school life, then went over to the US for further education.
Cool. Where in the US specifically?
I went to Connecticut, so that's a state in the US, and I went to Trinity College, which is based in Hartford, Connecticut. So it's one of the smaller sort of liberal arts colleges,
Mm-hmm.
which is where I went to study.
Cool. And what did you study over at Trinity College? I may have heard of it, speaking of.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, tiny liberal arts, and I think there's an entire consortium of them. So I did a double degree in economics and then sort of international studies so we have concentrations. So in a concentration of African studies. I don't think I've veered that far away from Africa even when I left.
Oh, wow. Yeah, did that lead that I'm sorry, did that lead you to your work currently at Chatak and all of your previous experiences with the African continent? Can you tell us a
Absolutely.
little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I think it was both, I would say personal and part of it maybe pushed by one of the high schools I attended. So as I mentioned, I sort of grew up traveling a bit. And after Ethiopia, going to Kenya, I think it just opened up my worldview to Africa even more, I would say. And then when I went to South Africa, I went to this university, and it's not university, sort of a pre-university high school called African Leadership Academy. And I remember when we first joined, the idea was for us to come back to the continent after, pursuing our university wherever it is that we would have attended. So that was almost contractual at that time, but I don't think that's the case. So I think from a very
Okay.
young age, there was always that connection,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was personal or through school. So it didn't, yeah, I think I always knew that I would come back to some extent, or even if I didn't, the work that I would do would be related
Was
to to the continent.
was your time at African Leadership Academy profound or what
Well, absolutely. I mean, I always say, I
mm,
think people who see this might, some will relate, some might not. I would say it was
okay.
one of the hardest experiences I've ever had.
Mm.
And I look back and think, yeah, it was certainly one of the most profound because moments. If you consider, I mean, it's 2 years of high school, and they go ahead and do outreach and open up the university to 100 students per cohort. So it's a two
Really
year
tight knit.
so it's very tight knit. And on top of it, you're not only doing, so it was an A level, sort of a British curriculum, but there was
Right.
also another curriculum devised by the academy itself with a concentration in African studies, entrepreneurial
Mm-hmm.
leadership, and then within that, there's a whole element of, education around emotional intelligence, and you're getting scored at based on your proactivity or self-regulation. So you can imagine being 16 or 17 and
Nice.
having to work with two
Mm-hmm.
curricula, and then going to a school that's so diverse, right? So it's almost that, you speed run through um, maturity, through diversity, uh, and a whole host of things. I think I would certainly say it was profound. Yeah.
So kind of like for a summer type thing.
Pardon?
It's for like a summer
No, it's
or
for 2 years. So it's
Mhm.
Yeah, so if you th I think with the American system it would be grade 11 and grade 12.
Mm.
I think for the British or for the sort of French system, you can consider it as year 12 and year 13. So it's a 2-year program. It's the last 2 years of your high school. So it's pretty intensive. And it's a boarding school, so you're basically sequestered to the university, to the school.
I'm a little bit like I find that a little bit fascinating because I thought I had actually seen the same institute or the same academy on Phoebe Gates's profile on her
It could
LinkedIn.
be, yeah. It could be. So I mean, there is a summer program
Oh, okay.
for it that is devised for high school students from the rest of the world, if I'm not wrong. I mean, don't quote me. I
True.
think it's called the Global Scholars Program. So it's sort of an intensive
Mm,
experience for the
mm,
summer,
mm.
except us who actually attend the school, you're attending it for the 2 years prior to
Oh.
college.
So what was your experience like? Being there for two
Yeah.
years.
Exactly. I mean, it's intense, right? As any high school student, when you're in
Mm-hmm.
it, you're gonna complain and all of that. But then I look back now and think how amazing it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have a bunch of kids from different
Right.
countries. I think at some point we had about 40 nationalities that were represented from
How
Africa.
fun. How fun.
Exactly. And then it's a boarding school. It's rigor. There's a quite a bit of a focus on academic rigor, and
Wow.
then you're doing your math, your geography, or whatever it is that you're choosing, and then on top of it, you have another curriculum around African studies, African history. You're doing seminal readings.
Mm,
And so it's really intense, and it really does try your ability to connect with other
mm,
people, your
mm-hmm.
ability to handle stress. How do you think about the continent? How do you think about your own space in the world beyond
Gotcha.
Africa? So
Gotcha.
it's, if you, it's a very foundational experience, I would
Mm-hmm.
say.
Yeah, that were the 40 of you like in the same, program for 2 years together.
Yeah, so I mean, as I mentioned, every year you'd aim to have, I think they would aim to have 100 students. I think that might have
Oh,
changed a little bit. I think maybe 125 now. So they would accept 100 students from all over Africa.
okay.
Um, I think around 41 nationalities during my time were represented. I'm sure it's
Mm.
gone way
Oh, that's
higher
right.
since then. Exactly. So everybody is, with the A-level system, which is the British education curriculum, you're able
Mm-hmm.
to choose some of the courses that you'd like to take. So those are your sort of academic courses, your mathematics, your physics, your economics, etc. And then there's a whole host of courses under the curriculum designed by the African Leadership Academy. So you're taking both. So everybody is taking entrepreneurial leadership. So this is, you're learning how to create businesses. Um, how do you run NPOs, NGOs? And this is a high school level, of course. So you're, working
What
with these two curricula at any given point.
okay, what would be an NPO? I'm familiar with
Like a
NGO.
nonprofit, for example, right? Again, like this is high school level, but
Oh, I
to
see.
give you some idea, I remember being at ALA, and we would learn how do you take an idea
Mm-hmm.
to an execution, right? So you're
Mm-hmm.
going through piloting, ideation phases, how do you work with teams?
Mm-hmm.
So all of the businesses within the boarding school, for example, were run purely by students, right?
Fun.
So um, the laundromat, the part of the cafeteria, et cetera, et cetera. And then you also had other sort of organizations created by those students
Mm.
that would also operate outside of the school. And so so you really had an early experience around what it took to take something that's from an idea level and
Mm-hmm.
then deliver it. And there's a whole host of things under that, right? So it's not just creating something, but it's also how do you work with a team? How do
Great.
you navigate issues, etc.
It's kind of crazy because I had an international experience very early on in my, let's say, I don't know if I would go so far as to say that middle school is part of my career, but um, as a seventh and eighth grader in junior high, I attended the American School of Doha in Qatar, right? Because
Hmm.
my father was working there in the oil and gas industry back then.
Right.
So I attended the American school there for 2 years, and for 2 years I made the best friends. Like
Hmm.
we were all international. We were from all over the world. People from Africa, people from around Europe, from from America, from Canada. Like it was
Yeah.
just eye-opening, and I made the best friendships there, right? And like to this day, I carry that foundation with me because what a great group of international friends. It's very very hard to describe.
Absolutely. No, I can relate to that, right? You're having to live with, interact with, and I
Mhm.
guess in our case at AOLA, work with
Mhm.
people from across sort of socioeconomic backgrounds,
Okay.
languages,
Mm.
um, histories, religion, and you're really navigating at an early age through all of these things that quote unquote make you different, but in reality, can be somewhat of a common denominator, right? And to your
Yeah.
point, I mean, some of my closest friends
Yeah.
are from ALA. And I know so many others who have remained sort of in contact wherever they are. We have quite a number who've remained, for example, in the US, and I know they have an ongoing community there. Those, for example, from Tanzania who moved and then they have a community there. And I think the school is also very active in ensuring that there is an active sort of alumni network as well. So yeah, I couldn't sort of relate more.
Dig deeper into the alumni network over at at ASD, American School of Doha, because I still keep in touch with several of my friends there,
Right.
albeit not so actively, but yeah, just like opens your mind at that age. And so I carry that with me to this day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, tell me a little bit more. I'll have to do that once
Sure.
once I get a moment, maybe sometime
Yeah.
after the call. But please do divulge us and yeah, with all of the great work you do over at Chat and the previous experiences that you've had.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been in the education space pretty much since I've started
Mhm.
working, which is what now, 8 years, I think, 7, 8 years.
Okay, okay. You've been
Um,
over at TED conferences, Zellerman Communications,
yeah,
and Zisha
exactly.
Prez.
I think if you look at, I tend to jump from one thing to the other, is what most people would say, it would see. I see it
Yeah.
as an opportunity to learn from different people and different environments. Similar, I guess, to my experience in terms of
Uh-huh.
growing up, which has been, sort of going from one place to the other. So I enjoy that. I've been with Chatac actually relatively, it's been relatively new.
Okay.
I've been there for coming up maybe on the fourth month, if I'm not wrong. We
Mm-hmm.
say in the tech ed or in the tech ed world, that's like a year, especially in a startup world, right? It doesn't feel like in any other organization, whether it's corporate, maybe I'd still be new, but I don't think
Okay,
that's
okay,
how I feel with Chatak.
okay.
Right. So as I mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
What is your role over there?
Yeah, sure. At Chatak right now, I head our sales and partnerships. And the
Mm,
way I think Mati, the founder of Chatak, would describe it is it's more
mhm.
so, a foundational role, right? Like because it's a startup, we're working in building it up together. So
Mhm.
some of the work that I do is obviously there's the pipeline work and
Okay,
working with our different accounts, but it's
okay.
also helping and creating some sort of a framework, sales
Well,
and partnerships framework. And I think I'll take this opportunity to say we have a brilliant team at Chatak who just
okay.
make working with whatever we're doing right now that much more enjoyable and amazing.
I'm glad
So
to hear it.
that's, yeah,
Hmm.
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it's going well so far. So far so good.
Yeah.
What led you to this role?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not that far-fetched from what I've been doing. Again, it's in the education world,
Mm-hmm.
and I was at the African Leadership University for about 3 or 4 years. Correct me if I've like lost track of time. Ever since the pandemic, I have no idea what
Oh
one
my
year even
goodness. You
feels or
just got
looks
lost in
like. It's
your
bizarre. It's
ecosystem
so
there.
bizarre. Um, but I was working, I finished university and
Mm-hmm.
I was interning with TED, and I think you mentioned it,
Yeah.
and thoroughly enjoyed that experience. But at some point I just made the decision to move back, to be honest
Okay.
with you, for different reasons. One of the major ones being that I just wanted to be back. And it wasn't the easiest of decisions I made, but I made it. And ever since then, it's always been either within capacity building, community, but always related to education. So right before joining Chatac, I was working with the African Leadership University, which interestingly enough is sort of is under the same group as ALA. And I joined to work as chief of staff to the CEO back then, and then worked in a partnerships capacity. So that has, and prior to that, also worked sort of an outreach capacity for NYUAD. So there was, I think one transfer to the other in building a community and network within the continent of different educators, different groups within the education ecosystem within Africa. And so, I when I was at ALU, I thoroughly enjoyed working with my team, but felt that I needed a bit of a challenge because it's a bigger organization and just wanted to get my hands dirty.
Yeah.
And which is how I met Mati, the founder of Chatac, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the background of Chatac because it's phenomenal. And I have I would say sort of a growing ecosystem of educators and a network. And so I wanted to bring that over and see how we'd be able to use Chatac. So, I mean, for those that don't know, Chatac is a message is learning. We facilitate learning delivered on messaging apps at the moment, primarily on WhatsApp. But we're looking in the near future, we'll be able to do to be able to deliver on different platforms such as Telegram as well. And the idea here being, how do we address sort of low connectivity, low resource settings, but ensure that, and how do we ensure learning happens in those environments? So we can go into depth, but I just wanted to give you that context.
Great, great. How big is the team over at Chatac?
It's a startup, so it's a mighty team of maybe 7 or 8, of which a good chunk of it are our tech team. We're just absolutely amazing. And then there's Mati, the founder, and myself. So Mati and I work side by side on partnerships and sales. And then the rest of the team, really, they're all part of our tech team who build our architecture.
Is it just the one founder? Um,
So there's only one founder, and maybe I can go a little in depth to the history of how Chatac came up. So Mati founded Chatac, but he also co-founded Sola X. So that's the School of Leadership for Afghan girls. And then the X part is, and I'll explain and I'll send you links if it's helpful. But there's a Taliban ban on girl child education in Afghanistan, and it's ban on physical education, so going to school. So one of the things, excuse me, um, and so there was an actual physical school called the School of Leadership for Afghan
right.
Girls, and then because of the physical ban, Mati co-founded Sola X. So this is purely WhatsApp delivered learning for Afghan girls wherever they may be around the world. And so I think you'll have to correct me and maybe I can give you the exact numbers, but to date we have about 39 to 40,000 learners. I would have to check the number. And it's delivered in different languages, Pashto, English, and another sort of local language. I'll have to check. And then, and so it's been able to offer that. And it is that background and context that now led to Chatac, right? Because there was an evident need for learning to be delivered to that middle group. And what we call the middle group is we are not solving for education delivery in a sort of no connection area, right? We're
Yes.
delivering learning where where a learner might have a smartphone that might carry WhatsApp, because a lot of other learning management softwares or infrastructures require high bandwidth, right? Like you'd have to go on a computer, load something on your browser, and sort of the environments we're looking at don't have that. So how do you use WhatsApp, which has billions of users, and how do we leverage AI to allow for learning to happen on something like WhatsApp?
Okay, okay. So, I mean, as the director of sales and partnerships for Chatac, are you like in direct contact with these like villages and communities in
Yeah.
Africa?
Thanks for that question. So at the moment, the work, and also this isn't just Africa limited. We're working with
Oh,
an organization, for example, based in South America.
okay.
Um, and this could be used in Central Asia, wherever there's WhatsApp usage, right?
Great.
And why? So our use cases can really be varied. As when I'm working in sales and partnerships, what we're looking for we're a public benefit corporation. So
Mhm.
public benefit is at the helm of what we do. So we
Mm.
try to find organizations. So think of us as a service provider, right? We have a platform, and I can tell you a little bit more about how that platform works. And we look at health organizations, for example. We're learning that a lot of health organizations have quite a bit of training around health extension workers. So how do we facilitate that? Because one, it's really expensive to do in person. We're not a complete. You're not going to be able to replace in person. I don't think that's even important personally. I think in person has amazing qualities. We're human beings, part of sort of a social ecosystem. But how do we use this to support some of the work, right? So health institutions are one. Training of teachers is another that we're doing with a ministry at the moment. So it can vary, right? So we work with organizations that are trying to deliver learning or training at scale, depending on wherever they may be.
Wow. It seems like you have quite a lot on your hands.
Yeah.
So do you work with like what age group do you work with? Do you work with
It
secondary school,
varies. It completely
primary?
varies. So, as I mentioned, Sola X, for example, that's purely for sort of middle school to
Mhm.
high school students, right? And so that team delivers learning and has their own content that is designed for that group. We're working with an organization that's doing maternal mental health training,
Right.
and that's based out of Kenya. We have an
Oh,
organization that's doing similar trainings, but in South America. So it can range from, you know, uh, high school students to anybody really that's whatever the organization is trying to do, which actually is amazing because there's a degree of inclusivity there. And that AI component that you mentioned earlier, we're able to deploy learning in local languages, and so it can be contextualized where people are. So I guess the age component is something I've never considered, which is awesome because how many aunties and uncles are on WhatsApp, you know? So depending on an organization, they're able to not just work with different age groups, but different languages and different local contexts as
yeah.
well.
I mean, still trying to get my nuclear family, like my
Yeah.
direct family to join me on WhatsApp. So that's still a work in progress,
Okay.
unfortunately. But um,
You'll
yeah.
get
So
there.
I'm sorry.
And I said you'll get there.
I know, you're right, right? Maybe after this episode,
Exactly.
it'll push them to do that.
Yeah.
However, like, yeah, so I've done my um share of like international volunteering, right? Like
Yeah.
I've done a homestay in Honduras for 6 weeks. I've gone to Ghana actually with a during my old college days, I did uh, a campus, I mean, a mission trip to Ghana where some people would source like health. We did like a short like health working stint. We did a short. We did many like drama skits and such throughout villages in Accra, Ghana, and yeah, and I've also like in middle school with my school in American school, the American School of Doha, we did a trip to India, slash Nepal, and like it's we would visit remote villages in most of those trips, right? And like I would see how yeah, I would just see like how we from like a completely remote part of the world were able to get in touch and have access to those like remote villages. And so I'm kind of wondering like how do you guys approach, working in partnership with
Yeah,
villages in remote parts of the world, such as South
right.
America, the
So
Philippines?
when I'm looking for possible partners, what we're looking for initially are mission aligned
Um,
organizations,
oh, I
right?
see.
They mentioned we're a public benefit organization. So are they doing a work where they're trying to reach, individuals that are a bit beyond the tarmac? And I want to say something that maybe I said earlier is this isn't, we're not solving for an offline community because that's a
Mm,
big chunk of, because I know people will say there's that as well, which is true and it's something that we're constantly thinking about. As
mm-hmm.
we do that, there's that middle sort of group that I mentioned, right? People with a bit of connection, people with a bit of a smartphone, and we're not talking about the latest iPhone, but a lot of individuals within the continent and the broader sort of world have WhatsApp. I think the number is like 3 billion or something. And so it's a huge number. So why not look into that
Yeah.
and look at organizations that are doing, as I mentioned earlier, for example, it could be trainings of teachers. So there are a lot of organizations within the African continent and beyond, for example, that might have a focus on early childhood education. But
Oh,
you look at that ecosystem, early childhood education is not just about numeracy and literacy education of that
oh,
child. You need to
okay.
be able to have teachers who are able to
Mhm.
deliver on any sort of innovative pedagogy or whatever the case. How do you train those
Yeah,
teachers?
yeah, exactly.
And so maybe it's that you have an in-person training for a teacher, for one of the main teachers, and then you have like a cascading training for other teachers in the different
Okay.
vicinities. But maybe you use WhatsApp, right? Because there's that whole thing of traveling, et cetera,
Mm,
which makes it that much harder. So we look at organizations that could be doing work like that, health extension workers.
mm,
How are we, who are we looking at? Are there organizations that do work like that? So anything within that public benefit sphere
yeah.
is one of the is to your point, like how do we look for them? That's one of the ways in which we're looking for
Mhm.
them.
And then
So yeah,
in addition, how do you like gather like what what their greatest need is, right? Because it can be like
conversations.
numeracy of
Exactly. I would say conversations. And I think my previous roles have helped me, build a sort of informal, informal sales force in my head, where,
oh,
I've met people, I've talked to them. So it's almost
mm,
tapping into that and not formalizing that. And
yeah.
saying and talking to, a myriad of individuals who've sort of worked either in education and then or it could be Googling, it could be LinkedIn,
Mm,
whatever the case may be. So you're
yeah,
really leveraging so many different tools,
cool.
both sort of personal and not, to be able to
Yeah.
build that, to continue building that network and pipeline.
Do you guys work with any of the government entities
Yeah.
or governments in Africa?
Yes. So,
Is there?
and I'll send you a sort of case study on our website. So we've
Mhm.
been working with the Ministry of Education Rwanda in partnership with MIT's Day of AI in
Okay.
training teachers.
Oh,
Uh, so
nice.
that's, that's something we've been doing. So that's one of the aims as well, because
Mm.
we work with not only sort of NGOs or nonprofits or for profits, we work with
Mhm.
corporations, we work with ministries. In fact, that has been an aim of how do we integrate Chatac into systems, into governmental systems, right? Like Ministry of Education, for example, or Ministry of Health. So
Because
yes, we
Chatac is
do.
not only for schools, primary and secondary, but also for uh like NGOs and governments as well.
Precisely. So I would even go as far as saying, I'm not sure if Chatak primarily is for primary and secondary because,
Mhm.
primary students are not on WhatsApp. Sola X is a specific use case because we
Mhm.
have learners now wanting to learn. They can't
Mhm.
do physical education, so
Yeah.
WhatsApp is an option, right? So we obviously could be a solution for environments like that. Whereas I would say a host of the organizations that we work with right now are actually adults that require sort of flexible reskilling. So we're just starting to work with an organization that's doing sort of neonatal trainings to doctors. So I'll be curious to find out, sort of the success rates in a few weeks to be able to share that with sort of the broader community.
I can only imagine there's like so much protocol going into this, right? Like following up, training the teaching the teachers who are gonna teach, and so on and so forth, right? Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And
yeah.
we try as much as possible to be hands-on with the organization. But maybe to give you an idea is, our team has built a brilliant platform where it's pretty intuitive. Um, so the learner or sort of the learner will only ever engage with the content on WhatsApp. They never have to go to a web browser or anything of the sort. Whereas the organization, let's say, that's doing the training or deploying the content has access to our own platform, Chatac AI. And then there's an entire dashboard with like real-time analytics, right? So any organization that's able to that wants to use, like, for example, Chatac, they have like real-time, we have a dashboard that gets real-time data fed into it. And so you're able to see uh, who, where, how well are they doing the courses. So from a high level all the way to, like individual level data, they're able to get that as well.
I would just like, I've been keeping an ear out for like work with AI in general, but I've been following the Gates Foundation, for example, for a while, right? Just because I that's just the philanthropy and as a sector that I'm
Right.
interested in. I see for example, Bill Gates working with AI in remote like areas in Africa, so on and so forth. So I feel like that's like only in like my personal opinion, I feel like that's like one of the only use cases where AI is like really handy. It's a personal view, right? Not to say
Mhm.
that AI is going to and should disappear tomorrow, but I feel like that's like the best use case for AI. And even with that, I would like just say like, oh, you guys should really like be wary of, I don't know.
No,
Um,
I hear you.
like I
So
feel like even for like using AI in Africa, I feel like there should be like humans that are monitoring that.
you just said something so crucial. We always say that, we leverage AI, or we're part of the work that we do is powered by AI, but through and through its human support through it. Mati has an education background. If you meet our tech team, they're, actual humans. And then they leverage, the things that we're leveraging is to allow for, these different notions that I mentioned. How do you reach people in low connectivity setting?
Yeah.
How do you reach people in low resource environments? So those needs have led us to leverage AI in ways, for example, making sure that content can be deployed in any language, right? So that's one. Two could be facilitating an easier conversational flow. We're working with an organization right now, and our team are available around the clock to support them, right? So even with the organizations that we're working with, it's not it's not that they're typing and they get sort of an LLM generated response. It's us. We're doing this because we value education ultimately. So that's
Like,
one. Sorry,
yeah,
continue.
like AI is not a one size fits all solution. Like AI is supposed to complement and like
Yeah,
enhance, right? Not
absolutely.
it's not a one like blanket cover all solution that you can just like cover on top of a country, be like, there you go. And I don't think it works that way at all.
No, not, and this is my personal opinion, not at all. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
every few years there's like a new thing that comes up, and we think that that's the sort of, and I mean, there's so many criticisms and rightful criticisms around AI, rightfully
I just
so.
I just think that it should be met with protocol for
Absolutely, like the
not to
proper
be like,
guardrails,
yeah.
absolutely. And for example, and we had a conversation with the prospect a few weeks ago. Mati was on this call, and
Mhm.
the person asked us sort of around. So we've just to maybe let me backtrack, because I do want to give you a bit of context. So we have our academy, what we call a Chatac Academy, and when Chatac was being designed, one of the things that was, put in place is how do you ensure like a wholesome learning experience on something like WhatsApp, right? It requires a bit of thought. So we devised sort of a survey and insight tool so that will feed directly into the camp. So, for example, some organizations might need to track learning outcomes, right? And then you can do that with a survey that's rolled inside WhatsApp itself. Um, Help desk, students are going to ask for help. So we've devised a help desk. Still, student just, gets support through WhatsApp, and then the team can respond to them from our platform. And then reminders and nudges, because you want to be able to remind students to go ahead and take that course, or those doctors or those nurses. So there's an entire sort of it's a holistic process that we've taken to work around that. So one of the things that we've done to come back to that AI piece is there are teams that are able to design courses. They have the capacity and the resource. There's some that don't. So we have built our own sort of a model that's designed, like AI model that's trained on what we call the 7 vectors of learning, right? And these were designed by educators in the US. And so when you feed it a PDF document, for example, on Economics 101, it and I would have loved to show you, then it builds this learning tree based on those 7 vectors of learning that now you can go ahead, click on it, and then generate lessons from, right? But even that has serious guardrails. Like it shouldn't
Yeah.
go outside of that and then outside of that document and start taking notes and things from different parts of the world. So
I feel like, for
yeah, go ahead.
example, like Coursera does a good job, or like a fairly good job, where they have all of these resources available, right? But they back it up with really good content, right? So I
Right.
feel like that's kind of a good example, maybe.
Yeah.
I haven't taken a Coursera course in a while. However, I do feel like it's a little bit more like credible, right? Just with all of the iffiness out there in the world.
Mhm.
Um, like for example, like you might be able to generate 1,000 courses in an hour. So what, right? Like who cares? It's about the
Right.
delivery, right? And how that's delivered. So that's kind of how
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
what
That
I
human element, especially in education, is crucial. It's
yeah.
absolutely crucial. That's why,
Exactly.
I wouldn't even say we're an AI company. We leverage and we use AI to allow us to do the work
Mm, yeah.
that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really the crux of the matter where it's at, like
Right.
human to
Precisely.
humans, like it's like that quote, like if you want to, if that Abraham Lincoln quote, right? If you want to cut down a tree for an hour, you should spend 5 hours sharpening
Sharpening your axe.
your axe. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's
Yeah.
kind of like the mentality
Yeah.
that not just with Chatac AI, but that everyone should adopt.
Right.
That's what I really believe at the hardest
Yeah,
of hearts.
absolutely. No,
Yeah, yeah,
I completely agree.
yeah. Thank you so much for your conversation and your input, and I really loved hearing about what you guys are doing over at Chatac AI. Where can we find you, Mhraf?
Yes, so you can find me on LinkedIn. So that would be, my actual name, Mhraf Worku. And then I would love for people to just check out Chatac. So that would be chatac.ai. So that's CHATAC.ai. And we're always looking for partners and groups or individuals that also provide feedback. So just reach out.
Great. Thank you so much, Mhraf, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye. Bye.